Genesis 19. And the claim there is that the story of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah is not a lesson about the evils of homosexuality. And this I 100% agree with.
A man named Bailey wrote a book in which he says the sin of Sodom was a lack of hospitality. The people weren't very hospitable to these angels. Yeah, that's true, but it was a lot more than that. The people said, here's their response outside, verse 9. They said, stand aside, out of the way, Lot. Furthermore, they said, this one came in as an alien and already he's acting like a judge. Speaking of Lot. Now we will treat you worse than them. So they pressed hard against Lot and came near to break the door. Now this is really out of control. They want the two strangers. Their passion is so strong, they storm the door, driven by lust. But the men, the angels, verse 10, reached out their hands, brought Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both the small and the great, the important and the unimportant. They were old and young and small and great. But look at this, so that they wearied themselves trying to find the doorway. Even though they had just been made blind, they were still trying to get in. Would you say that lust was out of control? Amazing. You would think if you'd been made blind, you'd get out of there. Lust is so compelling, as this kind of perversion is, that they kept trying to get to the door, and God eventually burned the whole city to a crisp. And born out of that event was the name that has been through the years used to describe this kind of behavior, sodomy. Sodomy, which appears in 1 Kings 14:24 and Deuteronomy 23:17 and 18, had its origin here. A sodomite was one who engaged in homosexual perversion. The sin of Sodom was homosexuality, not a lack of hospitality. It's reiterated, by the way, in Jude verses 6 and 7. Homosexuality is clinical. Sodomite is biblical. That shows it for what it really is. A passion and a lust that is out of control.
So what's wrong with homosexuality? First, it violates the creation order. It violates the creation order. Secondly, it denounces procreation categorically. Categorically. Well, procreation, does that mean two people who are beyond childbearing years shouldn't be able to get married? No, they should be able to get married. Why? Because categorically they are the two halves of humanity that come together to make a one flesh union, and they are the two halves of of humanity that come together to make children. Therefore, categorically they belong together. So yes, they can get married, even if they can't produce children, because categorically they belong together. It also blasphemes the illustration. It turns Christ on himself and the church on herself. It denies the need for sanctification because it takes what God calls an abomination and says it's not even sinful. And finally, it is a miserable existence. We'll talk about that more later. No one who knows anything about the homosexual lifestyle and loves a person could celebrate the fact that they're in the homosexual lifestyle. It is a miserable existence.
Be sure to comment below with any questions or comments you have and subscribe to my channel so you don't miss future episodes.